Good evening. In my ongoing reviews of some interesting vampire movies, we come to a very original and creepy and atmospheric movie called alternately Fangs of the Living Dead or Malenka, Niece of the Vampire from 1969. Was written and directed by Amando de Ossorio, an Italian director. It was his Spanish director, I'm sorry. It was his first horror film. It's shot in Madrid and also in Rome and a castle somewhere up in the Castilla region of Spain. And it's very good. The lighting is good, the sets are good, the decoration is good, editing, sound, all interesting. There's kind of a creepy soundtrack. The plot is there's this model played by Anita Ekburg, whose name is Sylvia Morel, finds out that she has inherited the title of Countess and an estate in northern Italy. And she's going to go there to meet her uncle, who is called Count Waldbrook, is played by Julian Ugarte. And she meets a bunch of interesting characters. When she goes to a bar in the town that's the castle is located in, and tells them where she's going, that people all seem to be horrified. They're like, don't go up there. They start, implying that there's something wrong, but they won't tell her what. And she goes and she meets her uncle, who is very charming, and tells her, you're the inheritor of the castle. Now he shows her a portrait of his late wife Malenka, who looks like a brunette version of Sylvia. It looks, very much like her, only with brown hair rather than blonde. And then he gives her dinner, tells her where she's going to stay, and invites her to go to bed, and she does so. And then in the middle of the night, she's woken up by this woman named Malenka, who is played by Adriana Ambesi, and very beautiful, very buxom girl who is trying to convince her to leave the castle. She says her uncle is evil, that he's a centuries-old vampire, and she needs to escape. And as she's trying to help her to get away, her uncle breaks in, grabs Blinka and takes her to the basement and sort of chains her up and whips her. And Sylvia sees this and begs him to stop. And then it's revealed that apparently she's a vampire too, because she's got pointed teeth. And I said apparently, and I'll tell you why later. And he takes her back up to her room, but he's also told her this story about Malenka being, her ancestor being a witch, and that she was a scientist working on a process to prolong life. And she made some sort of a strange discovery, and the people in the village were frightened by it, and they accused her of witchcraft and burned her at the stake, even though she wasn't really engaged in witchcraft. She was doing some sort of alchemical experiments. And we don't know whether to believe that or not, but that's the story that he tells her. And he says, there's a curse on the family, and that includes you too, and you must write your fiance and tell him that you can't get married. And her fiance's name is Dr. Piero Luciano, and he's played by Gianni Medici. He becomes upset when he receives the letter from her saying she's breaking off the engagement, and decides he's going to come to the village and find out what's going on, because it's not like her. So he arrives with his rather doofy sidekick, a guy by the name of Max, who is played by, I have the name here somewhere, Cesàr Benet. And he's sort of frightened of everything. Learns all these stories about witches and vampires, and he's getting all upset. And Piero is telling him, "Oh, don't be silly. There's no such thing. It's all nonsense and folklore." And they talk to this kind of drunk doctor, Dr. Horvinger, played by Carlos Casaravilla, and he's telling, "Oh, it's all true. Malenka was a witch and blah blah blah." And Piero doesn't buy any of it. Even when a bartender named Freya hands him a book. Freya is played by Rosanna Yanni. None of the women in this movie are anything less than absolutely stunning. There's some really gorgeous women in this movie. And she's one of them. and very beautiful blonde. And anyway, she tells him this story about Malenka and hands him this book, and he reads it and he says, "Oh, this is nonsense." He's not buying any of it. Another of the bartenders is a woman named Berta, and she is played by Diana Lorys. And she dies apparently from a vampire bite. She's got two, red bites on her neck, and she's buried. And then later, she apparently returns as a vampire. I said apparently because later on, Sylvia's becoming very upset, and Ugarte is acting really weird, Count Waldbrook, and asks her to drink he slits his wrist and asks her to drink his blood, and she refuses. Makes her wear a dress that was worn by his wife, Malenka, which is a stunning dress. It's pale, it's bright blue with gold accents, and Anita Ekburg looks just a complete knockout in that dress. Max says she looks like one of the Borgias, and I think that's funny. But he's trying to make her drink the blood, and again Glinka comes in, and Berta comes and kind of scares him off, and then later we see a scene where Berta is taking these vampire teeth, which are false, out of a box and putting them into her mouth. So she's not a vampire; it's a fake. And then there's a scene where Blinka is still chained up in the basement, and Sylvia comes in and cuts her down. She's also not a vampire. That was fake. Apparently the whole thing, and Piero figures this out, is being concocted by Count Waldbrook to drive his wife insane. So if she says anything of these things to a psychiatrist, they're going to think she's nuts, and the estate is going to go back to him. And that's the whole, premise. He just wants the castle back to himself, and the only way to get it, because she was the actual heir, is to convince a psychiatrist that she's crazy. She believes in vampires and witches, and all this nonsense. So he's concocted this elaborate plot. Berta was not ever dead. They faked her death. The certificate was signed by Dr. Horbinger, who's a complete drunk, and he believes in these things because he's besotted all the time. And he has this crazy theory about bats, and bats not dying, and bats a bat's arteries never deteriorate from when it's 1 year old to when it's 20 years old. The arteries are still healthy, and they've also hibernate. Well, it's true bats can hibernate. I don't know about that thing about the arteries being true or not. I don't think it actually is. And but something about the death-life cycle and being connected with sleep and all this. In the end, Piero has been chained up because he's interfering with Count Waldbrook's plans to drive his niece mad. So he chains him up in the basement. There's something a little bit S&M, a little bit maybe homoerotic in that. I'm not sure. Julian Ugarte plays the characters a little bit swishy, and I'm not sure if that's intentional. But then they tell, he says, Piero says, how is it possible that, if this is all fake, how is it possible that Berta came out of her grave, and, isn't she a real vampire? He says, no, she was never dead, and, there's a tunnel underneath the castle, and that's how she came out of the grave. And, so he convinces him basically that the whole thing's a fake. But in the end, he punches him out and knocks him into he's released by Sylvia from the chains, and she says, I had to pretend I was going to bite you to make this look real. He's trying to get Sylvia to bite him in the neck to convince her that she's a vampire, but of course she's not, and she pretends to go along with it, but then turns. And in an ending that was supposed to be the end. That was the end of the original Spanish version of the film, but for the English version, they put in a different ending. They put in an ending where Piero stakes Count Waldbrook through the heart, and he is a real vampire, and his body collapses to a skeleton, and then the skeleton bursts into flames, and as the skeleton is burning, the portrait of Malenka burns as well, and finally the image vanishes. And I thought that was kind of a cool ending. someone said that kind of contradicts the whole film. Not really. One thing I should mention, the dubbing of the non-English speaking actors is terrible. And I understand that, in 1969 they couldn't really do the same techniques that they can do, say, now, where they can actually do it by computer. You would have had to have taken all of the Italian and Spanish actors and made them repeat their lines in English so that their lips would match up. Well, that would have cost an enormous amount of money, and they obviously did not have that kind of money at that time. So some of the dubbing is pretty bad. Their lips are still moving when they've stopped speaking the English lines, or they just don't match up. Other than that, it's really good. It's creepy. There's a lot of blue lighting. Blue and gold are themes that kind of play throughout the entire thing. The portrait of whoever did the portrait of Malenka is a really beautiful portrait, an oil painting, and Anita Ekburg is nothing less than her usual stunning self in the movie, and does a really good acting job, I thought, too. I don't think she was really credited as being as good an actress as she was, because people were a little too focused on her looks, which is understandable. But again, it's not really fair to her. She was a very good actress, and her performances should not be overlooked, especially in this one. And if you haven't seen it, the film noir Screaming Mimi, where she plays a murder suspect who thinks that she's going crazy, and people are kind of trying to convince her that she's going crazy. Her psychiatrist falls in love with her, which is understandable. That complicates the plot, but she does a really good job in that too, and I won't spoil the ending for you because there's a shock. But again, very good in that, and a number of other really good films. This one, Fangs of the Living Dead from 1969, is a very good, interesting Spanish vampire film.